Hi, this video I hope will give you some tips and hints about buying property here in Corfu. Please take the time to watch the whole video. It's very interesting. I think it's interesting anyway. In a few minutes I'm going to go down to Rhoda and Oscar's and meet my friend top lawyer Paul Tateos, and I have a chat with him, and he's going to give you a few more lawyers' views and help about buying property in Corfu. You'll need a lawyer, a notary, maybe an architect, and possibly a builder. At the end of the video, at the end of the video that is, I have listed some names and phone numbers and contact addresses of these sort of people who I have used in the past and I've found highly professional, and I fully recommend them. Now, you can shop around and you may find a little bit cheaper, I don't know, but I've always found, living in Corfu here, that cheap is not necessarily good. Trust me, I learned the hard way. Oh, by the way, they all speak good English. One problem here is that laws and regulations can change on a daily basis. Even after living here 32 years, I still can't get my head around the Greek way of thinking, and I'm probably a bit stupid, but I don't think so. Anyway, here's a few of my personal tips for anyone thinking of buying property out here. Not the lawyer's tips, they're to come. You'll find that most younger people can speak good English and will always be pleased to help translate for you if you're speaking with an older Greek who doesn't speak English. A special tip here, don't fall out with anyone in the village. If you fall out with a Greek guy, you can probably alienate the whole village against you. They're all related and interrelated, trust me. I learned that one the hard way as well. When you're here, and if you're going to be here longer than 6 months, you'll need to get a Greek driving license. Failure to do so and you're stopped could have your vehicle confiscated. Trust me, that's true. Wear a crash helmet if you're on a bike. Please, please. If you're going to bring a foreign car here, take a tip. Go to the Greek consulate in your country and pay the taxes and get Greek number plates for your car before you come here. It's a hell of a lot cheaper. Trust me, you'll save a hell of a lot of money on taxes. Oh, and when you're here, I believe this law is still in force. You can't have your car here longer than 6 months, 185 days say. And then the car and driver must leave the country. Now, a lot of the English that are over here at the moment think they can get on the ferry and pop over to Italy for 24 hours and come back. Well, they're idiots, because if you do get stopped by customs, that's not acceptable. They'll ask you to produce documents to show you've been living in the UK in the previous few months. Not easy. And that one I do know from experience as well. Another thing, if you're thinking of buying a house and moving here, please rent somewhere and come over for a winter first. You can go to someone like OK Travel, who rent villas long term, short term, and because winters are not like summer. It rains a lot, there's nowhere open, just a few tavernas and bars, which I like, and you'll find there's no cinemas or theatres, so you've got television, sit at home. That's if you buy a digibox or book on local television, pay, of course. The only other alternative is go to a bar, mix with other English and gossip. Most of the English that come here gossip about people they've never even met. Not very nice when you're the subject of the gossip. I've been in groups where some people have been frightened to go to the toilet in case they're talked about by the other English they're sitting with. Trust me, it's just like Spain. If you do own a property here and you're going back to England for the winter, can I suggest it's best to book a management services contract to look after your property while you're away. OK Travel, that's right, OK Travel. And they have a wide range of services. They're builders, they have a building division, they have a pool making division for putting swimming pools in, they rent villas. They're really excellent services. I've known them for years and dealt with them for years. It's just that nowadays I have trouble remembering names. And their details are on the end of the video, and they have a chat line that you can log on to, and you can ask them some questions maybe, and they'll give you some information. But certainly they're worth talking to and using if you want. That's it for me. I'm going now down to Rhoda to meet Paul Tateos. He's a superb lawyer, one of the top men here. He's got businesses in Athens, Corfu and England. His English is perfect, and he's agreed to talk to me on camera and give a few tips and hints and information about buying property out here. So hang in there. I'm closing for the moment, and then I'm going to come back on when Paul's here to introduce you. I'm back at Oscar's now. I am at Oscar's bar, my favourite watering hole, and I'm sitting with my friend right here, Paul Tateos, one of the top lawyers in Corfu. As I already explained, I have used him many times, and always comes up with the goods and got me out of a lot of trouble in the past. So Paul, how are you?
Hi Al, I'm fine thanks, how are you?
Can you explain why a lawyer is required for purchasing a house, his duties, and possibly how much it might cost a customer?
Of course. A lawyer is required for many reasons. First of all, and most significantly, he needs to make a research at the land registry office to see that everything is okay regarding the property that is being sold. For example, the property might have burdens, legal impediments, seizures, foreclosures, mortgages. So it's the duty of the lawyer to go to the land registry office and check and see if there are any such burdens. And if these burdens, perhaps there were burdens in the past, if these burdens have been extinguished. So that's the first and most important task that the lawyer has. The second task is that the lawyer acts as a go-between between many professionals that are required for a purchase. And by professionals I mean a notary, an engineer, and also an accountant. So the lawyer has to be able to speak to all of them and to control, in a sense, their work. Because why is this? This is because the sale requires a lot of documentation, and some of the documentation is issued by public authorities, but some documentation is issued by private individuals, such as the accountant and the engineer that I just referred to. For example, the accountant has to show that all taxes regarding the property have been paid correctly in the past. If they haven't, then penalties will have to be paid by the seller, though, not by the purchaser, by the seller. The second thing that the accountant has to do is to check that the square meters that are being declared to the tax authorities are the exact square meters that are also shown in the deed and the land registry office. So if there's any discrepancy, then it's up to the accountant to make the necessary amendments to the square meters. Now, as I said, an engineer is also needed. Why is an engineer needed? Because the seller's engineer will have to present technical documents which the purchaser's engineer will have to check. For example, a building permit if there's a building involved, a topographical showing the exact measurements of the plot of land. Lately, it has become very important in Greek property law what we call the legalization of the property. This means that if a property has or had any illegalities in the past, all these illegalities have to be legalized before a sale takes place. For example, if there was a storage room that was never mentioned, or if the seller adds a certain room, or if he builds a veranda which he closes and it appears as part of the house. All these things have to be legalized because otherwise the sale cannot take place. So that is why the role of the lawyer is very important, because he has to check all this. Now I think Al, you said something about costs involved.
Yes, can you give any idea of what a lawyer would cost normally? I know there are cheap lawyers.
I'm not going to tell you how much the lawyer is going to cost, because it depends on the amount of work that needs to be done. However, I will tell you what, and this is more important for prospective purchasers, what the total cost for them is going to be. And by total cost, I mean the legal fees, the transfer taxes, because it is up to the purchaser to pay the transfer taxes, the notary fees, and the land registry fees.
Yeah.
Now, you must estimate that a total for all those are in the vicinity of 10 to 12% of the total purchase price. So you must always calculate 10 to 12% in addition to what you're going to pay for the property. However, please note that this doesn't cover two things. It doesn't cover the possible fees of an engineer. An engineer is not obligatory on the part of the purchaser. However, I always advise my clients to have an engineer, because if they don't have an engineer, then they cannot check the documents, the technical documents that the seller's engineer is going to provide. So
engineer,
yes.
In English we would say architect.
It's yes.
Or mechanikos.
It's here in Greece is what we call the civil engineer, the mechanikos.
Yes.
The architect only here in Greece only deals with property design mainly, the house design. So it's the civil engineer who does all the dirty work with the documentation.
So at the end of the video there will be a phone number for a very good quality engineer. Don't worry. I've already got it. Don't worry.
So that was the first extra cost. The second extra cost is an estate agent. Most British people buy properties through estate agents. That's not necessary. It's not necessary like it is in the UK. It could be word of mouth. It could be an advertisement in a newspaper or on internet. But the majority of purchases are made through estate agents. Now, the percentage that the estate agents charge depends. It depends on the estate agent. The average percentage would be 2% on the purchase price. However, there are estate agents that might charge more. It's also very important to note that these percentages, I'm talking about the 10-12% that I spoke to earlier, and the estate agent fees, these percentages might drop a little the higher the price is. So if you're buying something with a very low price, then you must think that it's at least 12% and probably 2 or 3% at least for the estate agent and some money for the engineer. But if you're buying property at a very high value, and by high value I mean anything over 300,000 I would say, then the percentage would drop. So it wouldn't be 10 to 12%, it would probably be something like 10%. and the estate agent probably wouldn't be 2 or 3%, would probably be 1.5%. So it depends a lot on the value that you're buying.
Oh, that's clear anyway. And also, is there any difference between buying an old house for renovation and a new built house, or even just a plot of land to build on? Is there any difference? That's a long
The procedure is the same, Al.
Okay.
The procedure is the same. However, if there's a building involved, it requires more documentation, so it becomes a little bit more complicated. So I always advise my clients that if there's a building involved, then also employ an engineer. If there's no building involved, then it's not that necessary. Also, you talked about old buildings and new buildings.
Yes.
It's more difficult with an old building because of the way that they were built in the past and because there wasn't so much control in the past. So usually old buildings require what I mentioned before. They require legalization, or part of them require legalization. So that makes things a bit more complicated. Whereas new properties usually have very recent building permits and they are up to the recent laws. So if they are up to the recent laws, that means that no legalization is needed, and therefore it's simpler than the old buildings.
Well, that answers my next question. So, is there any problems about connecting to the electric out here? Electrical connection, getting a box if you don't have one, things like that?
It's become a lot easier, I have to admit. Up to certain years ago, there was a monopoly by a Greek public company called laywer. Now this doesn't apply any longer because of the EU regulations. Now there are various private electricity companies as well. So it's quite easy to connect. However, I need to mention that when you complete the process of the purchase, and we're talking about buildings now, of course, we're not talking about plots of land, then it is always advisable to change the electricity bill and the water bill for that matter in your names, and that requires a few hours work, let's put it like that.
Does a lawyer do that?
A lawyer can do that, yes. In the majority of times a lawyer does, but there are times that the client also wants to do it by themselves, but that's quite rare.
Difficult. And the other thing was, do you have to have a new land map, or i.e. topographic, for all purchases, land or houses?
That's a good question, Al. Definitely for the purchases of plots of land, that is required. However, if you buy property in for example, Corfu town, which is within town planning, then no new topographicals are needed. They pay more attention to the documents that are required for the building and not the plot of land. But if you buy a plot of land which is either just a plot of land on its own or a plot of land which is outside town planning, then yes, you do need a new topographical.
Okay, the other one thing was, so is it important to have all of the family or neighbours sign the contract when buying an old house or just a piece of land?
Yes. It was very important in the past, Al. It's become less important now for the simple reason that recent laws have made things more watertight. But I always advise my clients that if they buy plots of land in small villages, especially small villages, where there is even the remotest possibility that a neighbour or a family who has a plot of land which borders the plot of land that is being sold, then it is always better that for the neighbours or the other family to sign the contract as third parties so that there are no disputes in the future.
That's a good idea, I think, yeah. And on another note, Is the notary required on all purchases, land, houses, no matter what? Do you always need a notary?
Yes, it is compulsory. The notary plays a very important part in Greek property law. It's a notion that you don't really have in the UK.
No.
A solicitor in some cases in the UK acts as a notary, but here in Greece a notary has wider powers. But the role of the notary is most important really, because a notary, even though he is a private individual, he also has public authorities. So he acts a little bit as an intermediary between the state and the private individuals. So he or she are very important, and you can't have a purchase without them.
Okay, and I don't know if this is in your ballpark, but does a buyer need a residence permit or a bio-residence permit before he can buy a house here? I don't know if that's in your domain.
Immigration law has changed a lot in the past few years. Yes, it is in my domain, because residence cards follow a purchase. So to answer your question, Al, no, you don't need a residence card before you make a purchase. But if you do make a purchase, if you are an EU national, then you are able to go very easily to the police station and get yourself a residence card. So that's very important. But this has also become very important and very controversial for British nationals, for the simple reason, of course, that Britain is now not in the EU any longer.
That's been a problem.
So this means a different procedure. So a British national cannot get a residence permit at the moment. The only way that he can get a residence permit, and a number of my clients are doing this lately, is if they purchase property of an amount of over 250,000 euros. In this way, they're able to get what we call the golden visa, which is a residence permit. Yes, which is a residence permit for 5 years.
Oh, that's answered that one, because I wasn't sure about that myself. I meant you had a 10-year one. And almost finally, would you give any tips to anyone thinking of buying a house out here, what to do before they come here? Is there anything they can do to make life easier for them?
I always advise my clients, Al, to pay a visit and see the property. There are certain clients, and because of this golden visa that I mentioned before, because they do want a residence card, that they see the property through a site of an estate agent, and they decide to buy the property before they even see it, which seems ridiculous to me.
But many do, don't
but
they?
Many do, Al. Believe it or not, many do.
I don't understand them, to be honest.
Yes.
And finally, if someone wants to come out here and live for a winter, which I recommend before they move out here, and want to rent a house or villa to live in, would you recommend they get a contract from the renter, from the person renting the villa?
I think that's imperative, Al. If you don't have a contract, then you don't have any rights in the house.
Yeah, because I've seen many cases where the people are really dumped upon by...
Yes, exactly. So you do need a rental contract. You can't do without it. But I also want to say, Al, on this, that quite a few people now buy property here in Corfu as an investment, either, as I said before, to receive this golden visa, or because they consider, and rightly so, that property is still very cheap in comparison to the UK and other European countries, summer countries, let's say, like Spain or Portugal. It's still much cheaper over here. So many people buy as an investment, and it looks, can never know of course, but it looks as if property will be going up in the next
It is going up
years.
actually.
It is going up already,
Yes.
yes.
I've noticed that myself in my house. But anyway, basically that's it, Paul. I really thank you for coming out.
You're welcome, Al.
Thank you very
You're
much for
welcome.
coming up and talking.
You're welcome.
I so
It was a pleasure
appreciate
seeing you again.
Thank you. Well, there you go. Paul had to dash off for an appointment. But if you want to book any of the people listed after I finish this message, just phone them. I've given you personal phone, mobile numbers. But I do beg you, don't be a pest and expect free advice. These are all professionals. I've known them for years and years, and of course they work for money, same as you do. So, but they are the best. I have, as I said, used them, one or two of them for 30 years, and that's going some. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and following this message is all the contact details for everyone you need to buy a house over here, from estate agents, who I recommend, to lawyers, to engineers, to everything, well, basically everything. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great Christmas and a great New Year, and next year be successful. Thanks for watching. Ciao. Cheers.